The chill in the Vermont air clung to my skin as I stood on the train platform, a paper cup of coffee slowly losing its warmth in my hand. Across the tracks, autumn blazed in shades of crimson and gold, the kind of landscape you'd see on a postcard, almost too perfect, too curated. I had envisioned this scene for months while mapping out my parents' 40th anniversary getaway. Every detail had been planned with care: the foliage, the timing, the destination that mirrored their favorite season. It was supposed to be meaningful, a gift. When I handed my ticket to the agent, he frowned slightly as the scanner blinked red. "This one's already been checked in," he said, as if that clarified anything. I paused, confused. That can't be right, but even as the words came out, a sense of dread curled in my stomach like smoke. He tilted the scanner toward me, same code already logged that morning. My phone vibrated. It was Brian. The message was short, careless. "Tiff really wanted to see the leaves. You don't like crowds anyway. Thought it made sense." I didn't respond. I didn't call. I just stood there, silent, watching the train I had booked roll away, carrying the very people I had gone out of my way to honor without me. Tiffany had taken my seat. Tiffany, my brother's girlfriend of half a year, who once filmed a TikTok using my toothbrush as a prop in my guest bathroom. Now she was apparently part of the family trip I built from scratch. Not only had they gone without me, they hadn't even thought it necessary to tell me. That was the part that stung deepest, not the exclusion, but the assumption that I wouldn't notice. That I was somehow optional. For a long time, I believed that being dependable meant being loved. I was the child who cleaned dishes without being asked, who came home with perfect report cards, while Brian skated by on jokes and half-effort. When our dad lost his job the year I turned 16, I didn't hesitate. I picked up weekend shifts at the diner and handed my wages over to our mother. She used to call me her little rock, and I wore that nickname like armor. Brian, meanwhile, was always just figuring things out. He wrecked 2 cars before 20 and never paid a dime for repairs. When he managed a C in microeconomics, Mom cried from pride. "He's really putting in effort," she said. I was the one who bought his textbooks when he got into community college. When he dropped out, I helped him job hunt. When he couldn't hold that job, I co-signed his lease and quietly made the rent payments he missed. He moved into my guest room so many times it stopped feeling temporary. Each time with some flimsy excuse. Tiffany was simply the newest chapter in his freeloading saga. I never voiced my frustration. I earned a good salary as a systems analyst. I told myself I was being supportive. That's what strong daughters do, isn't it? Hold everyone else up. Mom never directly asked me to cover for him. Instead, her appeals came wrapped in guilt-dipped observations. "Your brother's trying. It's just tough out there. You're fortunate to have stability. Not everyone's as responsible as you." She never thanked me. Not once. But she made it clear that giving was expected, and when I did, it wasn't seen as generosity. It was just who I was. The capable one. The fallback plan. The fix-it daughter. And after enough years, I stopped questioning why no one else was expected to step up. This anniversary trip. It wasn't meant to prove a point. It wasn't revenge or desperation. It came from a place of memory. They once told me they had honeymooned near the Berkshires. Every fall, Mom's eyes still lit up when she mentioned that trip. Dad still kept an old Polaroid from those days tucked in his dresser drawer, faded and worn. I thought maybe if I recreated that magic, they'd see me. Not just what I gave, but who I was. I wrote the idea down on a sticky note after a coffee chat with Mom. October in the Berkshires. She had reminisced about the maple syrup on the windowsill, the creaky floors, the inn tucked near Lenox. I remembered it all. Within a week, I had the entire itinerary mapped. Scenic train passes through New England's most colorful routes. 2 nights at a historic inn with vineyard views. A dinner reservation at the very restaurant they visited 40 years ago. Fireplace room upgrades. Just like before I wrote on their itinerary card. As for myself, I didn't ask for much. I booked a modest motel nearby, took coach class on the train, and kept my schedule flexible using PTO. The entire experience cost me nearly $9,000 meals, transportation activities, flowers for the anniversary table. Brian wasn't part of the original plan. Mom had vaguely mentioned he might be busy freelancing, which usually meant gaming in his apartment while Tiffany practiced dance routines for her phone. I didn't push. The vision I had was simple: a peaceful, intentional experience, not to dazzle them, just to remind them that I was still here, that I loved them even when it was quiet. I wasn't seeking redemption. I wasn't trying to buy affection. I just wanted a moment that would linger, a story they might share at Thanksgiving, a photo they might hang beside the Polaroid. But standing there watching the train vanish down the tracks, it hit me with icy clarity. They didn't forget me. They excluded me. Worse, they replaced me. I gave them something beautiful, and they saw only what they always had: not a daughter, a resource. About a week before departure, a message from Mom lit up my phone screen. Tiff says the fall colors would make great content. Brian thinks it'd be fun to bring them. That, okay, no details, no logistics, just the casual expectation that I would make it work, like always. There was no mention of how they'd get there, where they'd stay, or who would pick up the tab. The phrasing had the usual sugary coat, less a question, more a quiet command. After all, I was the one who handled the messes. That was the unspoken agreement. I stared at the text for a long while before responding. If the rooms can still be changed, I'll try. That was all I said. Not because I was angry yet, but because I already knew how this pattern unfolded. Every spontaneous decision eventually landed in my lap, like a task on a to-do list I never agreed to write. That night, I logged into the reservation system. The inn was nearly booked solid. The only room left was overpriced and not even in the same building, but I snagged it anyway. Then I reached out to the train company to adjust the seats. Our assigned cabin maxed at 4. Any more and we'd need to downgrade to a different car. I asked them to hold the original setup. Mom didn't reply. Not about the room, the itinerary, or even to say thank you. The family group chat, once buzzing, faded into silence. A few days later, I opened Instagram to see a story from Tiffany, a pair of stylish leather boots captioned, "Can't wait for fall adventures." I knew those boots. They were sitting on my living room floor. She'd taken the photo in my apartment again without asking. Something clenched in my chest. Not outrage exactly, but a growing sense of erosion. And still, I let it go. That's what I always did: let it go, rationalize. Tell myself I was overreacting. They wouldn't exclude me. They wouldn't. But then I found myself standing on that platform, watching the train vanish around a bend, carrying my family, my plans, my generosity without me. I stayed there long after the last echo of steel faded into forest silence. The sky was painted in soft morning fog. Trees waved lazily in the breeze, indifferent to the tight knot of emptiness blooming inside me. My suitcase sat untouched beside me. I hadn't moved. No one reached out. Not Mom, not Brian, not even a vague oops or something went wrong. I wasn't forgotten. I was removed. Tiffany got the picturesque journey I had organized down to the last detail. She was sitting in the seat I had planned for myself, enjoying the curated experience I had spent months preparing, an experience they hadn't asked for, but eagerly absorbed. And me, I was invisible. But I didn't cry. Not there. Not then. Instead, I crossed the street to a cafe, ordered another cup of coffee I didn't want, and watched strangers come and go through the windows. A woman kissed her daughter goodbye. A couple argued quietly over a map. On my phone, I saw Brian's newest post, a cheerful snapshot of Mom, Dad, and Tiffany arms wrapped around each other on the platform. The caption read, "Family Fall Getaway. Finally making memories together." The word "together" hit me like a slap. It wasn't just the omission. It felt deliberate, like they had finally become the family they wanted to be, and I wasn't part of it. I didn't comment. I didn't double tap. I locked my phone and let it face down on the table, tracing the coffee ring stains on the wood like they might explain something. They hadn't made a mistake. They had made a decision. And now I had to make one too. I didn't go home. Instead, I rented a car, no destination, no GPS, and pointed it north. I remembered a town from a past work trip. Brattleboro. Quiet. Tucked into the hills of Vermont. A place where the trees spoke louder than people and nobody needed explanations. I checked into a small roadside inn with a working fireplace and a room that smelled like pine and clean sheets. Through the window, I could see a gravel path lined with sugar maples shedding their final leaves. That first night, I curled up under a heavy blanket with a mug of chamomile tea I never finished. I watched the branches sway in the wind, like they were waving me into stillness. For 2 days, I didn't open my phone. I ignored the few texts that trickled in. None from Mom, of course, just a group message from Brian. Did you get the train times mixed up? No concern, just another joke at my expense. I left it unread. Instead, I wandered antique shops filled with things nobody needed but someone once loved. I walked through apple orchards, letting go of their last bits of color, let the wind tangle my hair, and let silence fill the space where disappointment had been. I bought a postcard from a gift shop. For a moment, I considered sending it to myself like a letter from someone finally listening, but I tucked it into a book and never wrote a word. And in that quiet, something unexpected settled inside me: peace, not comfort, but honesty. For the first time in a long while, I didn't have to justify my silence. I didn't have to manage other people's feelings or shrink my own. I didn't need to be the steady one, the capable one, the problem solver. I was alone. And it didn't feel lonely. It felt real. The trip I had poured myself into was over. The people I built it for had chosen who they wanted around. And now I was choosing too. I returned to my apartment late Tuesday, the sky dim and quiet, a soft gray ceiling over the city. The kind of weather that muffled everything. I dropped my bag inside the doorway and didn't unpack. Out of reflex, I opened Facebook. Mom had posted again. Dozens of photos. Candid's group shots posed smiles. She tagged Brian, Tiffany, even the bed and breakfast. But not me. One image froze me. The dinner table I had reserved months ago, candles glowing, a bouquet of goldenrod and asters I had paid extra to have arranged. My handwriting still visible on the place cards. Tiffany sat where I was supposed to be. The caption read, "So grateful for our children who made this anniversary so special. Couldn't have asked for a more loving weekend." I closed the app. The next morning, I received an email from Mom's shared account, subject line, "Photos from the trip." No message. No, "We missed you." No question about what had happened. Just pictures dumped into an attachment like I was a distant relative catching up. That's when I finally understood. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't bad planning. It was the family they chose to include, the one that fit the narrative they wanted to tell. The next day, I drove to a place I hadn't visited in a while, my own home, the house I bought 6 years ago. My name on the deed, my income behind every mortgage payment. I'd let my parents live there rent-free for years. They weren't home. I walked through each room. The towels I'd bought were threadbare. The scent in the kitchen didn't belong to me. Tiffany's raincoat was slung over the banister. In the dining room, the same room Mom once called hers during a toast, I stood still and listened, and it hit me with absolute clarity. They weren't guests. They were users. And I was done being used. The next morning, I drafted the lease adjustment. 2 printed copies, one left on the counter, the other mailed certified. It wasn't emotional. No accusations. Just facts. Rent adjusted to match current market rates. Utilities no longer bundled. Guests permitted only with written approval. It wasn't revenge. It was closure. I had finally stopped asking for space in a life I had built for other people. Now I was making space for myself. The lease notice had a firm deadline, 1st of the month. I didn't attach a note. I didn't need to. I didn't owe them a gentle preface or another explanation to cushion the truth. Later that same afternoon, my phone rang. It was Mom. She skipped any greeting and launched right in. "Lauren, what is this charging us rent seriously?" Her voice wasn't confused. It was indignant. "This is cruel," she added. "We're your parents." I let a breath pass before answering. "Then maybe you should have treated me like your daughter." There was a pause long enough to sting. Then she let out a sharp exhale, a scoff wrapped in disbelief. "So this is about that trip?" I didn't respond. "We didn't mean to hurt you," she added more softly. "It just happened." I could hear her pacing, her footsteps creaking over the old floorboard near the front window. "Your father's upset," but Dad hadn't called. He hadn't even texted. I didn't know if he was angry or just indifferent. "You could have just talked to us," she said. "I could have," I replied, "but I chose this instead." My tone was calm. Not icy, not emotional, just settled. "You've got until the 1st," I said gently. "After that, it becomes formal." She didn't believe me. "You're not serious." "I am." She hung up. For a while, I stood at my kitchen sink staring at nothing in particular. The faucet, the window, the tile grout. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't angry. I wasn't triumphant. Just solid. That house hadn't felt like mine for a long time, but now it wasn't theirs either. What began as an act of generosity had become a line in the sand. 3 days later, an email came through from a local law firm I'd never heard of. The subject read, "Intent to dispute ownership." Inside was a scanned letter. My parents, through legal counsel, claimed they had partial rights to the house due to long-term contributions and established shared occupancy. There were no receipts, no documents, just bloated legal language meant to sound threatening. I forwarded it to my lawyer. He called me within the hour. "They don't have a case," he said plainly. "There's nothing binding, just noise." But it didn't feel like just noise. It felt like a verdict. They weren't sorry. They were retaliating. That evening, Brian showed up. His usual air of ease was gone. He looked worn out, like the truth had finally caught up with him. "Tiff's gone," he said, standing awkwardly on my front step. "Said she didn't sign up for this kind of drama." He didn't ask to come in. He just hovered, hoping the door would swing open out of habit. "I don't have anywhere else," he murmured. "You know that, right?" I nodded. I did know. I also knew exactly what would follow if I let him back in. "I'm not your fallback anymore," I told him. He looked down at the ground, then back up at me, his eyes glassy but dry. "I didn't mean to hurt you." But he never said sorry. Not really. And I didn't offer anything back. Dad never reached out. Not when the rent notice went out. Not when the legal pushback came. Not even when Brian stood on my porch with nowhere to go. He didn't speak. He didn't text. He didn't ask. But that silence wasn't new. It had always been his way. When Mom pushed too hard, when Brian broke the rules, when I quietly broke under pressure, he just sipped his coffee and disappeared behind a door. I used to think that stillness was kindness. Now I know it was compliance. He wasn't neutral. He was complicit. The day I dropped off the certified letter at the house, he was out front watering the bushes. As I walked past, he looked up and said just one thing. "You don't have to do this." I met his eyes. "Yes, I do." He didn't argue. He didn't try to stop me. He just turned back to the rosebush and aimed the hose as if I hadn't said anything at all. 3 weeks later, I moved into a small loft across the river. Exposed brick. Tall windows. Just enough space for me and my quiet. No doors slamming. No footsteps overhead. No one needing anything. I bought a second-hand couch, a real teapot, and a lamp I actually liked. The air smelled faintly of fresh paint and dust. I opened the windows anyway. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for my phone to buzz. No family group chats asking for help. No passive-aggressive texts from Mom. No guilt wrapped in emoji-laden check-ins. Just silence, and not the kind that hurts. The kind that heals. Brian never texted again after that last conversation. Tiffany scrubbed her socials clean, unfollowed the entire family. And my parents. They went quiet too. Eventually, Mom tried once more. A message with no greeting, no subject, just a line, "We miss who you used to be." I replied, "You miss the version of me who never said no. She's not coming back." There was no answer after that. Sometimes I walk past the park near the train station and sit on the bench where I first read the message that started it all. I don't relive it anymore. I just sit. Because that's what peace feels like. Not dramatic, not victorious, just still. I used to think that saying no made me cold. But the truth? It made me whole. Last week I booked a train ticket to Maine. No spreadsheet, no itinerary, no group chat, no dinner reservations, no anniversaries to celebrate. Just me, a window seat, and a bookstore I've always wanted to visit. I didn't ask anyone if they wanted to come, didn't check someone else's schedule, didn't offer to bring anything back. I packed light. A single bag, a worn notebook, and a sweater that still smelled like cedar. At the station, I paused before stepping on board. I let myself remember Vermont not with bitterness, but with clarity. That ache was gone. All that remained was understanding. I am not their fixer, not their emergency plan, not the dependable shadow that fills in their gaps. I am not their plan B. I am the beginning of something new. On my mirror, now stuck to the glass with old tape, is a yellow, sticky note I wrote the day I moved in. It says only 5 words I owe myself the most. And every morning I read them. Not like a goal, not like a mantra, like a truth I've finally learned to live by. Not all stories are shared to earn sympathy. Some are told so others recognize their own. If you've made it this far and something inside you stirred, maybe it wasn't just a story after all. Maybe you've had your enough moment too. And if you have, tell it. Because your voice might be the light someone else is still searching for.